Prime Field.
UConn went 38-1. They had the number one defense in America. They dominated the Big East. They looked on paper like another classic UConn machine. But then South Carolina happened. 62-48, not a fluke, not a lucky night, not one bad bounce in March. That was a physical warning shot, because UConn does not rebuild like normal programs. They reload. That has been the entire myth of the program. One superstar leaves, another superstar steps in. One championship window closes, another one opens before anyone can even process it. But after 2027, that machine may face something it has not faced in years. No easy superstar replacement. No loaded transfer portal rescue. No guarantee that the next version of UConn is automatically terrifying. So the question is not, is UConn still good? Of course UConn is still good. The real question is much more dangerous. Can UConn still reload when the sport around them has changed? The crazy part is that UConn's 2025-2026 season was almost perfect. 38 wins, 1 loss. 20-0 in the Big East. Big East champions. 86.8 points per game. Second in the nation. A 118.7 offensive rating. Third out of 363 programs. And defensively, they were even scarier. 68.9 defensive rating. Number 1 in the country. Opponent shot just 33.5%. UConn allowed only 50.4 points per game. That is not just good. That is championship-level suffocation. For most of the year, they looked nearly untouchable. But the Final Four exposed the difference between dominating most teams and surviving the one team built to punch you in the mouth. South Carolina did not just beat UConn. They bullied them. They neutralized the primary shooters. They made the Huskies fight through physicality. And once UConn could not score, they could not set up the press. That was the domino. The defense depended on the offense. The pressure depended on made baskets. And when the shots disappeared, the entire machine started to jam. That is why the South Carolina loss matters so much. It showed that UConn was elite, but it also showed that elite was not bulletproof. For years, the sport revolved around one assumption. Eventually, UConn would be UConn. Eventually, Geno would figure it out. Eventually, the Huskies would have more talent, more discipline, more answers. But South Carolina has changed that conversation. Dawn Staley has now won 6 of the last 8 matchups against Geno Auriemma. That is not random. That is a pattern. And the April 3rd, 2026 Final Four loss did more than end UConn's 54-game winning streak. It made people ask a question that would have sounded ridiculous in another era. Is UConn now chasing South Carolina? That is the emotional shift. UConn used to be the standard everyone measured themselves against. Now South Carolina looks like the program setting the physical terms. More depth, more force, more interior pressure. More answers when the game turns ugly, and that is why this next transition matters. UConn can still beat almost anyone, but can they beat the program that now looks built specifically to break them? Now comes the part that makes the reload so complicated. Azzi Fudd is gone. 17.3 points per game, 44.7% from 3, 117 made threes, number 1 overall pick in the 2026 WNBA draft, selected by the Dallas Wings, the 7th number 1 pick in UConn history. That sounds like a celebration, and it is. But for UConn's roster, it is also a massive problem, because Azzi was not just a scorer. She was gravity. When she stood on the wing, defenses had to stretch. When she came off screens, defenders had to chase. When she touched the ball, the entire floor changed. That opened lanes. That created space. That made Sarah Strong's job easier. That made the offense breathe. You do not replace that with a random shooter. You do not replace that with a freshman projection. You do not replace that with hope. And the numbers show why. Azzi Fudd and Sarah Strong combined for 35.7 points per game. That was about 41% of UConn's total offense. Strong is still there. Azzi is not. That means the Huskies are losing one half of the offensive axis that carried them. And when the missing half is a 44.7% three-point shooter, the entire geometry of the court changes. Normally, this is where UConn does UConn things. They find a veteran. They find a perfect fit. They plug the hole before the hole becomes a crisis. They've used the portal before to add important pieces like Caitlin Chen and Sarah Williams. But 2026 is not a normal portal cycle. The research points to a major shift. 1/3 of transfer portal enrollees did not find a new program. That is not just a weird stat. That is a sign of a market changing. The portal has become crowded, risky, unpredictable. And for elite programs looking for an instant impact, the big names are not moving the same way. That creates a huge problem for UConn, because replacing Azzi Fudd is not like replacing a rotation player. You're trying to replace a number 1 WNBA draft pick. You're trying to replace spacing, shot making, late clock confidence, and defensive attention. And if the portal is dry, UConn has to solve that internally. That means young players have to become ready faster. Mystery projects have to become real contributors. Freshmen have to be more than future potential. And the coaching staff has to build a new identity without the easy shortcut. That is the scary part. The portal used to feel like a safety net. For 2027, that safety net might have holes in it. Sarah Strong's the reason UConn still has championship hope. 18.4 points per game, 7.7 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 58.2% shooting, 40.4% from 3. She led the team in scoring, she led the team in rebounding, she became a top 5 Naismith finalist. She's not just a star, she's the foundation. But that is also where the danger begins. Because when one player becomes the foundation, every weakness around her gets louder. Every cold shooting night matters more. Every injury scare matters more. Every matchup problem matters more. The research mentions Strong dealing with leg inflammation issues in early 2026, and UConn's recent history with star health is impossible to ignore. Morgan Chelly, Azzi Fudd, Blanca Quinones with shoulder issues, Sarah Strong with leg inflammation. The roster may be getting older through red shirts, but that does not automatically mean it is getting healthier. And that leads to the uncomfortable question. Is UConn one Sarah Strong setback away from chaos? That does not mean UConn becomes bad, but the margin for error gets smaller. The old UConn could lose a star and still feel inevitable. This version may not have that luxury. Depth can look beautiful on a roster page. Names stacked everywhere, former recruits, international prospects, redshirt players, high upside pieces. But March does not care about roster graphics. March cares about who can actually survive a physical elite game. And that is where UConn's depth gets complicated. The research points out that the retained minutes number can be misleading. Several bench players, including names like Ice Brady and Ayanna Patterson, are projected as portal departures because of limited playing time and injury issues. Gandhi Malou Mammal played only 4 total minutes in the 2025-2026 season. That does not mean she cannot become something. But it does mean she is still a mystery, and mystery is not the same as depth. Blanca Quinones has upside, but upside is not April production. The question is not whether UConn has names. The question is whether those names can become trusted players in the exact moment South Carolina exposed. Interior finishing. Physical defense. Shot creation when the first option is erased. Bench scoring when the stars are trapped. That is the difference between looking deep and being deep. And for UConn, that difference may define the next era. This is why 2027 recruiting feels so massive. Kalina Smith, Eve Long, Ivana Wilson-Manyaka, those are not just names on a board. They represent the traits UConn may need to survive the next version of the sport. Shot creation, interior gravity, disruptive defense. That is the blueprint, because the South Carolina problem is not just about talent. It is about force. It is about physicality. It is about having enough athletes, enough creators, and enough interior presence to win when the game stops being pretty. UConn needs players who can bend defenses after AZ. They need players who can protect the rim and finish through contact. They need players who can disrupt bigger, stronger teams instead of being disrupted by them. And if UConn lands those pieces, the reload continues. The machine evolves. The dynasty finds a new shape. But if they miss, that is where things get interesting, because the portal may not bail them out. The old automatic talent advantage may not be automatic anymore. And the rest of the country is no longer afraid of the name on the jersey the same way it used to be. Then there is Geno Auriemma. He is not retired. That part matters. The research marks retirement after 2026-2027 as false and unverified. He's expected to return for the 2026-2027 season. His contract runs through April 2029. But even if this is not officially the end, it feels like a legacy checkpoint. Geno turned 72 in March 2026. He has admitted he passed up 2 great opportunities to walk away, including after the 2025 national championship. That creates a fascinating tension. Is he staying because the machine still works, or because he refuses to let the sport move past him? That is what makes this moment so compelling. If UConn reloads, Geno proves the system is still bigger than any one player, any one portal cycle, any one rival. If UConn stumbles, the entire sport starts asking whether the dynasty is finally entering a different phase. Not dead, not irrelevant, not finished, but vulnerable. And for UConn, vulnerability is the one thing that has always felt unnatural. So can UConn reload after 2027? The answer is not simple. They still have Sarah Strong, they still have Geno. They still have the brand, the culture, the standards, the recruiting power, the history. But for the first time in a long time, the path does not look automatic. Azzi Fudd's shooting is gone. The transfer portal is shrinking as a quick fix solution. South Carolina has become the physical measuring stick. The bench has more questions than guarantees, and the 2027 class may decide whether UConn's next era starts with another reload or an actual rebuild. That is the whole story. UConn's machine is still running, but the fuel is changing, the sport is changing, the rivals are changing, and after 2027, Geno's greatest challenge may not be winning with superstars. It may be proving that UConn can still create them faster than the rest of the country can catch up. So comment right now, is UConn still UConn after Azzi Fudd? Or has Dawn Staley officially changed the power map? Subscribe for more college basketball deep dives, share this with a UConn fan, and watch closely, because the next UConn era might be the first one in years that actually feels uncertain.
Prime Field.